Okay, great. I'm Kelly McGill. Welcome to Midtown Reader. So happy to be with you all tonight. I'm new and am loving my new job. So we are so lucky tonight to have Samiri and in conversation with Alejandra. So Samiri is author of lots of poems, which she will read to us, but we were looking at tonight The Five Legs of the Cat. And from my understanding, that embarks on a journey to different landscapes of a world on foot. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, to some degree. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, and fill me in if needed. And so you are teaching at FAMU,
Yes.
and then we have Alejandra, as I said, in conversation, who is teaching at FSU. Do you all want to give a second to tell me a little bit more and our viewers about yourselves? Samiri, first.
Well, I teach anthropology and women's studies and religion, and I write poetry, and I enjoy that so much.
Where did you get that from? Growing up, did you have a mom or dad that loved poetry, or just you just picked it up?
Not actually. It was just looking at things, listening, paying attention to details
Right.
that kind of encouraged me to put it on paper.
I gotcha. I gotcha. A way to express yourself, I would assume.
And
And
discover to the world.
well, right, right. And then Alejandra, what about you?
Yeah, I teach Spanish at Florida State, Spanish language, culture, translation, theater, everything Spanish related. And I've been working there since 2008. And I'm also the director.
Quite a while.
Yeah, it's quite a while, right? Yeah. And also the founder and director of Tallahassee Hispanic Theater. This is a theater group here. We've been working since 2016. Yeah.
Right. Which is really, again, really interesting. Well, I'm going to hand it over to you all. I'm sure we are all interested to hear any and everything about your poems. I think you're going to start with some readings and then we'll go from there. Is that okay?
Yes.
All right, here we go.
I want to thank you, everybody that is here, for accompanying us and for listening to, my poetry. The first one I'm going to read is what I got in the third grade for finishing my math work early and raising my hand. And I want to say that this is the first and only time that I saw a woman breastfeeding a baby in Puerto Rico. Setting the scene deliberately in the janitor's dark closet, rearranging industrial brooms, mops, detergents, plastic, metal buckets, the tender, satiating, and yet eager sound, as if from a new innocent species, because more and more madres now, away from home, sewing panties and bras in fabricas with the big tap tap of El Progreso, the pad pad of Planificación Familiar, liquefied clouds, the original matte white color, through a close to exploding pair of mameyes. Me wishing also through my two in bloom violets, a sudden, oh, such marvelous sprinkle of bright yellow butterflies, spiraling on humid and sweaty grace, even though I stand, my weak left foot keeps the heavy wooden door 1/5 open, allowing inside only a few sun's threads. And the next one, I should have known better. God knows best. A little after the beginning of pubic hair, a few pimples, a hint of Avon blue eyeliners and cherry lip gloss, I was called to the altar for a healing miracle. My face a pot with noodle soup, over the hot stove to get rid of an insidious headache, a heart problem, a bad tumor. I couldn't help thinking, even though Dr. Ramirez from the pediatric unit had confirmed after an electrocardiogram and a prick, it was low iron, low hemoglobin. But Pastor Aurelio Gonzalez from the Sister Candelaria Baptist Church, in the name of El Médico por Excelencia, healed my legs instead, more so the left one, making them perfectly even, which he tested over a cold metal chair by pulling and pushing like a stick shift car. I never realized my legs weren't of equal length. I completely forgot about my painful cavities, my headache. I was consumed by the pain in my right arm, which pobrecita, poor thing, had to hold my skirt and underskirt in an almost twisted position during such a prolonged transparente miracle.
Wow.
The next one is going to be primary colors. So pay attention which colors. Ear shooting the animistic bleach water. My eyes sketch you blue swimming. Absorbed by the undertaking of your determined legs, closing my eyes, I dream I love you in vibrant red, exactly the way you have wanted. It happened on an early steamy morning, announced by colloquial birds in such a unique timbre, before the humming of what seemed translucent archangels. Your left hand touched the plain cement first, your feet, toes wrinkled, barely second, third, then, most notoriously, you made a close U-turn while I was taking my time to a clotted silence, getting more and more wet, almost completely drenched, to a determined you, now coming out of the most efficient dryer, wearing your scuffed heavy boots. You kept your distance, didn't offer a towel, staring at the tiptoe high above, oozing an audible posterior siren for what seems beyond the annual curfew, some self-imposed definite deadline. There were coagulated leaves from the few trees left, almost making it in the half-empty parking area. I look slowly drying, dripping less and less for a fermented sign inside an empty plastic container, inside a torn plastic bag between hot, fading yellow lines.
Beautiful.
This is a type of Cinderella draft. My first experience with Liberacion happened at my Baptist church, located in my father's white barrio, a Sunday a little after 11 a.m. At the skirt of the recently refurbished altar, aproned with roses, lilies, and carnations during an evangelistic campaign, coincided with the revival week of the Pentecostal Iglesia Betania. Such Liberacion was performed by a Pentecostal guest male preacher on a dark-skinned 13-year-old girl named Virgen with pelo malo, bad or kinky hair. She always sat in the back pews, like most members of my church mission, located in my mother's superstitious black barrio. I heard Virgin, her scream and scream, her hair getting messier and messier, like a witch. I saw her running away, leaving behind at least her left leather sandal. In a dream, I wish, oh, I wish, but oh, how many times I've imagined myself trying to feed even my right footing her sandal, and I write about it, my food not fitting. The next one is circus operandi. We dust off our extra velvety kung fu shoes next to a broken and cold body. Pull back from next in line onto such a tightrope walking, exposing the trembling mostly from our hips up. It is without a doubt the persistent drama of back and forth between our anchoring and our loosening up, more exhausting than between thoughts of Iguazu Falls and Julia de Burgos River reflections. We occupy ourselves with the absurd, changing of the whole deal in a single snap, in a flash, resting on the safest, the most stable flat. The absurd, quite personified, comes a second time, dressed as a colorful, super funny clown, rides in circles on a rattling, funky bike, honking the horn, turns to a black and white personaje mágico, yellow wings attached, make us all his magnific assistants, stand up from our newly designed padded orange seats, roll over the ground covered by purple curtains to a drawing of the highest blue and white hills. Lying down, we clap with our gray coated bare feet, rope after rope hanging from our blind backs. We could turn once more vertical. The next one will be, this is resurrections on the feet, or resurrecciones de pie. I'm going to read the English version this time.
Okay.
After her rape and mutilation, I thought God was going to step on all of us at once, pressing very, very hard, that we would melt and disappear even before his foot could fully come down. I'm not sure he has done it yet. Some of us coming as sloppy mud around his foot's legs, edges, between his toes, through the dry hole made by the rusted nail. Rubbing the toes, 1 by 1, 5 by 5, 10 by 10, from one group to another, from one to the other, the space in between is almost forgotten. A mother who finds one of the dead bones, for example, of a son's legs in the desert, glue bird feathers completely open, ready to dry, to fly, must be its best applicant. The Yanomamo girl distributing flowers instead of rice in exchange of clean water, her head to the ground, the legs without gold wires coming out, marking 15 till heaven. And Alejandra, if you read the epigraph on page 66 of Non-Patented.
Yes. Over the weekend, Rael and his design partner, Virginia Sanfratello, installed their 3 pink seesaws along the US and Mexico border, ensuring each side had a perfect balance. Children and adults were connected in meaningful ways on both sides. This is Stacy Laska, July 31st, 2019 in Travel and Leisure.
What else should summon us to the art of welcoming life, any life, a su vez no cualquiera, after an original dilation scene The next station or case 4016 in a platform, an open earthen mold of a pair of wide open legs, its exuded replica on the other side of the wall, one leg behind, one leg in front, innumerable repetitions. I'm going to be reading two more. This one is Of Legs and Gods, or The Bloody Prayer with question marks. Crawling, hanging, no more. Walking on our feet have trapped us in evolving destiny. Our hands freer to gather, hunt, cook, eat something like patitas, pig's legs. On my last trip back home to Puerto Rico, I requested mommy to cook them not just for me. I've given up red meat, but I couldn't pass patitas with chickpeas to lick my fingers. I first started to refuse lechon during that time in my life when Papi raised pigs to sell, especially during La Navidad. No pigs, no Christmas. Several times on a Saturday morning, ready to cry, heart pumping faster than usual, hands and fingers steering the air, glancing through the window, I heard mi cochinito squealing desperately, tied up and put on the black Ford truck of Baltasar. I told my God, myself two, three, four times, itching my throat, my arms, how sorry I was that I love mi cochinito very, very, very much. Not all pigs are the same though. I couldn't eat those I helped take care of. Humans aren't the same as other species. We eat what we gently walk into, touch after first seeing it with intrigue, profound appreciation, even devotion in the jungle, the wild savannas, at the zoo behind bars and or glass, buffaloes, monkeys, giraffe. I remember when teaching an anthropology class, the students shocked after watching in a documentary a group of Johansi men, could have been women, from the Kalahari Desert killing an adult giraffe to feed their band of less than 60 members. Don't we kill chicken, pigs, cows, lambs in such manners, in such numbers, as we ought to feed the whole universe at once? Still on our 2 feet, our freer hands to touch and grab, our eyes taking up more of a greater, even if blurry distance. Flying birds, swimming fish themselves have tried to convince me I should stop consuming them. Vegetarianism whispered in my right or left ear, mi nombre y apellido often. But I get easily hungry for mommy's turkey and fricassee, hot and shrimp, new leaf lemon chicken, Tom's mullet caught in the Gulf of Mexico. Maybe it has more to do with being able to stand, to move ahead, way ahead, no tail behind, por supuesto. Maybe bipedalismo, bipedalism, is el último responsable. We continue as Homo sapiens sapiens with such unique symbolic thinking, pensamiento abstracto, ideas, reasons, excuses, gods, B and P and Dalism, three transfigured. Take and drink and eat. As we speak, are we eating? In the name of the Father, each other, and especially of the Lamb of God. Are we eating each other and of the Spirit? Amen. And the last one, I would like Alejandra to accompany me. And of course, this is, or to join me. The epigraph here is from an article written by a classmate. We studied together anthropology at the University of Michigan, and she's now, her research is about Ukraine, specifically about the Crimean Tatars, their exile and deportation. So it says, They are reputed to do well with lower extremities, but are challenged to provide upper ones, which because of the nature of the hand is so much more complicated. And her name is Greta Ullman. And this is about people with prosthetics in war-torn Ukraine.
Okay.
Alejandra? Therapy of liminality.
Lluvia de pies.
Yes. Space that's neither.
Lluvia de pies.
Nor the gate.
Lluvia de pies.
Lluvia de pies. Having to choose today, tomorrow.
Lluvia de pies.
Yesterday.
Lluvia de pies.
Life goes on.
Lluvia de pies.
Regardless.
Lluvia de pies.
Of the rituals multicolored.
Lluvia de pies.
Candles.
Lluvia de pies.
No candles.
Lluvia de pies.
Without trees.
Lluvia de pies.
And lights. There's still.
Lluvia de pies.
Life.
Lluvia de pies.
Evaporated.
Lluvia de pies. Lluvia de
Lluvia
pies.
de pies.
Lluvia de
Lluvia
pies.
de pies. The ultimate.
Lluvia de
Lluvia
pies.
de pies. Healing the feet, unlike the hands, under awaited new drops, over unexpected puddles, while we are the cosa de humanos, to step on the green of the tip of a magnolia leaf, to lay on the white and blue palm of eternity. Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. Any commentary you have to each other or questions, answers, that kind of thing would be great. I'm not seeing questions up right now from my end. So if you all want to talk a little bit more, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me, Samiri, to participate in this event. It's a pleasure to talk about your poetry. This book that I really enjoyed reading this book. And I wanted to start asking you a little bit about the journey of writing this book, about its origins. When did you start writing these poems? Was it conceived as a collection since the beginning?
Well, I've been always very intrigued by feet. I think we take for granted until something happened to our feet. And also we appreciate them at the same time, but there's some issues with our feet too that causes some discomfort. We cannot imagine ourselves hugging with our feet. I was reminded too that when I was a child, I remember my father liked to touch my feet, and although I appreciate that, but it kind of feel uncomfortable more than, and he did it in a very nice way. And now I finding myself like when my children were little, I touched their feet a lot, and they even, when they were growing, they feel kind of uncomfortable about that. So again, I like that intrigue of the feet that, again, we take for granted, but we appreciate that at the same time. And then we kind of admire the feet and all of that. But at the same time, there is some adamancy or kind of attitude against the feet. So I like to play with that, to explore that.
Yes, in fact, yeah, I that caught my attention that in your poems, feet are many things, and you describe them as flags, of lluvia, rain, of clouds, no? So what exactly feet represents in the imagery of your poetry, and especially in this book? You talked a little bit about it, but could you?
Yeah, well, the feet is what takes us to many places, but we can also imagine the feet taking us to many places. It's like when again, you can actually go to places, with your feet, but also, talking with people who have had difficulties, especially growing up with their feet or actually with amputations and all that. then they could imagine, having their feet. Although even after they got comfortable, or they got not comfortable, but used to not having one or two legs, they kind of imagined that. So I think that was an inspiration to me. Yes.
Mm-hmm. I want to.
I'm sorry, and I could say that it's like something physical, but also something metaphorical.
Mm-hmm, or symbolic, yeah.
Symbolic, yes.
I love the name of your book, The Five Legs of the Cat. I love that saying in Spanish too. And that expression is full of resonances. To me, I mean, it could be something negative, right? It could talk about, it could be about chaos and about, but for me, it is more about discovery, about curiosity, about expectations.
Yes.
What does that expression mean for you? The five legs of the cat, and maybe you want to explain a little bit what it means in Spanish, that expression.
Yes. Yes, as I said in the introduction of the book, in Puerto Rico, there is a common idiom, he's always looking for the five left of the cat. And it is said when someone is believed to try to complicate matters by overlooking and overanalyzing things. And when I was a child, I was very inquisitive. I always asked questions. But again, most of the questions I kind of suppressed because, I grew up in a very rural type religious community. And so I was conditioned to believe that the more I suppress those questions, that, the more I could please God, the more I please God. So I kind of internalized many of those questions. And so yes, that comes with that. And sometimes in conversations, I came up with a question or something, and oh, here she comes. So, and again, I'm not saying that that's happened only to me. There has been, many people. It happens to many of us. But I can see that I was very inquisitive and very over analytical, I would say. And sometimes it consumed me. I was very submerged into so many thoughts and questions. So, and then also it assumes that this will lead to feeling overwhelmed, distress, or casting conflict and chaos, like you were saying before. So, okay, don't complicate. Things can be complicated. Don't complicate it even more. But it can also be said in a funny way, while adding a sarcastic compliment of being ingenious and creative. Although in my case, that was not much of the case until way later, when you go into school, college, especially, that's a good thing. Although, well, sometimes it can be, kind of have a negative thing, but for the most part, it's something very positive. So, but then through poetry, this book embraces that challenge and leave it up to the readers. But for me, is the contradiction of life, that it could be something positive and it could be negative, and it's really up to us to decide, at the end. So, to perceive, to look at the details for things, it can bring sadness, but it can bring joy too. So, but again, it's up to us to decide.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've always been very interested in the subject of childhood, and many of your poems are about children, right? And I wanted to ask you about that, because you are writing now, from a different time and a different place, right? About childhood, or your childhood. How is that experience right now, talking about your childhood from this different time and space?
Yes, I think is kind of reclaiming my past, and not only my past, but the past of those who surrounded me. Of course, that could be seen as pretentious, because I'm trying to speak for, those who surround me, and you see that there are many actual people. I don't say their name, of course, but I'm inspired by the life of members of my community. And of course, in my poetry, in all my books, I always start from Puerto Rico, but then I move, and it's accumulative. It's not that I kind of move away from Puerto Rico in order to embrace the world. No, it's accumulative. So that's always comes with me. But it's kind of reclaiming that, reinterpreting that my own way now that I'm in a different place. As I said, I ask a lot of questions. I was confronted with nature, with the reality of the world back in Puerto Rico when I was growing up in the 70s, and also by much dissonance and contradictions, especially within the in the religious narrative. So again, now I'm kind of revisiting all that and trying to reclaim that, to reinterpret, and from where we are, where I am right now.
Now that you mentioned religion, for Hispanic people, religion and superstitions, both paradoxically, both of them are concepts that are very prevalent in our daily lives. And I like to think that they define us some way, good way or bad way, but it's there, growing up with all this background, right? So what do religion and superstition mean to you in your life and your work?
Well, as a I would say religious scholar, I'm a little hesitant to talk about that superstition, because I embrace all religions, but I understand where you're coming from. It's all convoluted. It's a continuum, and I grew up with very specific religious narrative, and I embraced that. That was my life. As I said, it was very Protestant. Of course, my mother's side was Catholic, and actually Spiritist. My grandmother was a Spiritist. She went to, Spiritista gatherings and, communicate with the spirits. But I grew up mostly with that narrative and embraced that. That was my life. But then as I learned, about many things with anthropology, of course, helped me in that process to learn about so much diversity. I kind of, saw that as part of what humans try to do, try to embrace for different purposes. But, my perspective is wider now and it's broader. And so I'm definitely in a very, very different place right now, religiously speaking. And I like to embrace that, because being Hispanic or being Latino involve different things. And in that way, I'm not, I'm embracing that as part of my life, but not as where I am right now.
Yeah, that's great. When you were reading your poems, I was smiling. There's some humor in your poetry, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. No, what is the role of humor in your work?
Well, Alejandra, probably you experienced that too, growing up in Venezuela. Humor it's constantly in our life. We can cry, and then a minute later we can joke, and still it's not that we don't take our pain seriously, and that happens in different cultures too. And people sometimes think that, celebrate that those people they don't really suffer. They cry, they can go through so much and not feeling it. No, people are feeling it. It's because we cry, and we also can laugh one after the other, but still the pain is there. So I experienced that where we cry and then we laugh, and it was both at the same time, practically. And humor also played a very significant part of our life, to deal with different things, to connect with one another, to critique society, to comment, on society. So humor was very critical in my upbringing. And I miss that. When I moved here, I miss that. And of course, we have many comedians who have become very popular, but it's kind of different. And so I was not close to that. It was a very different experience, because humor also, for me, it meant community, all of us sitting together, gathering together and doing the jokes. So it was more than just sitting in my house and looking at somebody, saying jokes, but it was more a community thing. And even in your mind, sometimes when I started living in the United States, sometimes I feel lonely, and I could, remember the jokes, and that really was soothing for me and was therapeutic. So yes, humor is very important. It's a survival thing in our life.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say, that it's just a way of survive. It's a way of deal with things. Now that you were mentioning Venezuela, that's true. I mean, all the things that people in Venezuela have been gone through, and they still joke about it every day, And I mean, how is that possible that you can laugh?
How is that possible?
That is terrible, but that's the way, to deal with those things. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know how we're doing with time. I'm not keeping track.
We've got about 20 minutes, but I was just about to ask, we do have one really interesting question, if I can butt in for a second. And that's, Samiri, what do you think is lost in the translation of your poetry? I think that's a really interesting question.
Well, I'll try to answer these with a kind of a longer answer. I will say that in English, I'm more cautious. In this book, I try to experiment a little bit with style, and also, with a little bit of play between narrative and lyricism. But that's it. I don't take too many chances in English because it's not my main language. But when I write in Spanish, I do that. And on top of that, or in addition to that, I experiment a lot with words. I use a lot of words, and I'm very picky about which words I choose. So that's something that, at the beginning, I was really, I'm not going to write in English because I cannot, I was expecting the same thing, but then I resolved, that that's the way it is. And that's how, it's kind of a metaphor of my life too. I think that I am not profoundly and structurally bilingual, and I don't think I will ever be. So I could learn more the technique in English. I've written, poems for different journals. But again, I think that I'm not expecting to write in English the way that I write in Spanish. I don't think that will ever happen.
Right. I understand.
Yes.
Let me look. I think I might have a couple of more questions. So one was, you mentioned dolls a few times in your poetry in reference that the dolls are not Mattel, or don't bend at the knees. Discuss the metaphor of the doll and what it means to you. That's a really good, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think that the reference is to both two poems that I mentioned, dolls. I play a lot with dolls, girls. I was a lot in nature. We were a lot in nature. In fact, my dolls, some of them, I remember two of them we put mud in their hair. We experiment with that. We put breadfruit in their hair too and make their hair pretty bad. So it was dolls, these things, this object. And of course, I like to emphasize brands because we grew up with brands, Pampers.
Sure.
Okay? And in Puerto Rico, we actually make words out of those brands. Like we don't say diapers, we say Pampers. For this detergent, we don't say this, like detergente líquido. No? We say, Bell or Palmolive. So that's part of that. But anyway, going back to the doll thing, they were very important in my life. I speak to them. I ask them questions. I imagine that they answer questions to me. And the one about that doll that I found, it has to do with, me finding her. And it's because, all these bulldozers coming and changing all the landscape and all that. And things
Right.
go underneath and all that. So with that doll, I didn't remember uh, if that doll was even mine. So but I decided, and I think it meets one leg. So I decided to play with that doll, be happy with that doll, and regardless if the doll was mine or not. And I saw that as a metaphor of life, that it's a constant back and forth between what is our and what is not. Even with my children right now, they're not my dolls, but they're my children, but they're mine, but at the same time they are not. And as they have, I have two children, and two of them are already, where one is gone and the other one, he lives in Tallahassee, and another one is going to Gainesville. So it's down to one. So it's like I have to realize that, they're mine, my children, but they're not mine at the same time. So it's kind of like
Right.
with the dolls too.
I gotcha.
Mhm.
Well, and again, hold on. Give me 1 second. Let me make sure I've gotten, yeah, I think I have gotten, yeah, those 2 questions answered. Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that I have. And we've still got a couple more minutes if you guys have anything to add.
Yeah, I have another question for you, Samiri. You also wrote academic books. You wrote about a book about. Could you mention the title? I can.
Yes, Black Puerto Rican identity and religious experience. Yes.
Exactly. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how your academic work influence or inform your literary work. How is that process? Because it's totally different, right? Writing a poem,
Yes.
writing
Yes.
a
Yeah.
paper for a journal. So.
Yes, I would say, I started writing poetry in high school, and I was very much influenced by different tendencies. First it started in church, the Psalms from the Bible. There were not many, but, I will say the hymns. Also in school, I learned about Luis Pales Matos, Julio de Burgos. Then I learned in high school about the classic René Marquez, Garcia Marquez. And that's when I started writing poetry, but it was kind of like, marginal, not much. Then in college, I continued to write. And there I discovered new poets. And I was like, oh my goodness, how much I missed. Because again, my life was very restricted to sacred poetry, sacred stuff. So I discovered new poets from other countries too, mostly nationalistic, patriotic, leftist creative writing. And also, I took a class about British literature, and that opened my eyes regarding, how important poetry is in the world, not in my small world, but in the world at large, and how old poetry has been. Later on, of course, I learned about, ethnopoetics and all that. Then I went to graduate school, and there I learned about ethnopoetics, and I learned about the area of literary anthropology, and how you can use poetry to get into cultures, but also how you can use poetry to convey knowledge about different cultures. Not many anthropologists were open to do that. Only a few, like I took a class with Ruth Behar. She has done that a lot. And then I discovered that there have been many anthropologists who were doing poetry even secretly, like Margaret Mead, famous anthropologist Ruth Benedict and all that. And especially for women, it was like, because women were trying to establish legitimacy. So for women, it was really a struggle to again gain respect. But so again, if you on top of that you add that you're writing poetry, come on, is she serious? So of course I said no. And so also, the academic work was very demanding, so I didn't have much time.
Yeah.
But honestly, I think I embraced poetry more after moving away from Michigan, I had used to that, and then moving to Florida, it was a big shock for me. And I felt kind of lonely at the beginning. So I kind of started getting more into poetry, but also after a near death experience with my youngest daughter, that was very scary, extremely scary. And so I noticed like I started really after that experience to write more poetry. And so I decided to, instead of keeping them separate, although I still do academic work, of course, and then poetry, but I'm making a concerted effort to combine the two to some degree. So what I've been doing is incorporating the arts, poetry specifically, and other arts form into my courses. I bring different media to convey the knowledge from different cultures, and also I require students to do in all my classes. I require students to do a creative project that involve arts, so that they can test what they have learned. And also, I've been incorporating, my knowledge, especially anthropology, into my poetry. So that's what I was telling you, Alejandra, at the beginning, that I was, I always start in Puerto Rico, but then I move, to explore the whole world, because to me, that's the beauty of this life, is diversity, exploring what's out there, see the many possibilities that are out there. So probably that was a long answer.
No, that's great to know.
We can see that. So we can see that in the poems. I can see how you incorporate that knowledge, and it's fascinating to see or to see that information presented just in a different way. So
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions. You all have been fabulous. It's been so neat to just hear everything about this and learn about you said the Spanish theater?
Yeah, Tallahassee Hispanic Theater. Yeah.
Hispanic theater. Okay. Because it just really sounds neat. So I just wanted to make sure I had that correct.
And there is a website. There is a website for the Tallahassee Hispanic Theater.
.org. Yeah.
.org.
.org. And also on Facebook. Yeah, you can find us there with all.
Okay. Neat. That's good to know. Yeah, you guys have been great. Do you have anything else to add? We've got a few more minutes, just making sure.
I would like to thank, the community of poets in Tallahassee. I would have not been able to write this book if it were not for many friends, and many of them in Tallahassee, people from the 621 Gallery, 100,000 Poets for Change, the Big Band Poets and Writers, also Poetas Sin Fronteras during this time, during the pandemic. I joined this group, and we have been reciting poetry and sharing poetry with people from all over the world. So that has been very encouraging. Also, I want to thank Karen, my friend. She's from Tallahassee, Nitya Pandi. She's a PhD student at FSU, and Cassie Lejanos, she's also from Tallahassee. Judy Hunt, she's perhaps hearing these. Jonathan Harrington is a dear friend. Phoebe Phyllis, she's also from Crawfordville, and Mary Jane Riles. And especially I want to thank Indran Amir Sanayagam and Josephine Yu. Josephine is a great poet, also from Tallahassee. I cannot thank them enough. And I want to thank my family, and I want to thank Alejandra for just saying yes right away. I admire her. She's a wonderful person. I enjoy her acting and her dedication. So thank you, Alejandra. For me, has been a joy to share this.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been like really wonderful. Like I said, I really enjoyed reading your poems, and what a privilege to be able to talk to you about it.
Thank you so much.
Well, and real quick before y'all jump off, I have one more question because we have just a couple of minutes. Can you discuss the story behind the poem Prayer in Reverse?
Oh,
Give
yes.
us.
Yes, prayer in reverse. Yes. Yes,
These are
Miss
some
Rose.
good questions.
Yes, yes. That's a poem that is very close to my heart. Of course, you can say, well, all the poems, but yes, seeing a woman going through cancer is a terrible thing. And I don't know, I just feel um, this is inspired by different women, not one woman in particular. It happened to be that I put a name, but the desperation of this woman, like many other women, of praying and praying and praying and not seeing, you know, a specific result. To me, that's kind of painful. I don't want to say, you know, we always say there's a purpose with everything. Nothing happened for no reason or for a reason, or everything happens for a reason. But still, I just want to present the struggle because um, although we have to accept the contradictions of life, but, you know, to me, it's not resolved. You know, many people like to resolve it, but for me, it's not resolved. And I don't think that will never be resolved. Now I have a friend who is going through a very difficult time because of cancer. She's very young, and of course, any illness. But again, it's just I wanted to leave it as a struggle, and it's a little bit of there is a little bit of satire there, if you want to say. So yes, I don't know if I answered the question properly, but that's what's going on there.
I gotcha. Good. Thank you so much. Well, thank you too also for being here tonight. And I hope we can get you in the bookstore soon. But anybody can come to the store to get a book. Yeah. Also call or email. We can do any of that. So that would be great. So thank you all again.
Thank you, Midtown Reader.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you. I'm going to post this on Facebook. So anybody that happened to miss the recording, it will be up there. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. You all have a great night.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks.
Bye.